The most dangerous man in Seoul stopped mid-sentence when small fingers grabbed his hand. Jae-sun looked down, his face a mask of control that had ended careers and silenced rooms, and found a child clinging to him like he was the last solid thing in a collapsing world. She'd appeared from beneath his table, materialized from shadows and terror, with tangled curls, wide blue eyes, and a mother screaming her name from across the dining hall. The azure fell silent. Every gangster, every politician, every person who understood what it meant when Jae-sun's expression changed, held their breath. Because children didn't touch him. Children didn't run to him. And the frightened black waitress now frozen between tables had just violated every unspoken rule of his world. He should have pulled away. He should have called security. Instead, his fingers curled, just slightly, around the child's trembling hand. Welcome back to Tales by Moonlight. Before we continue with this emotional dark romance of the Mafia world, tell us, where are you watching from, and what time is it? This helps us to know how far the tales travel tonight. Hit that subscribe button, like, and share. 12 minutes earlier. Nia's reflection in the azure's polished brass elevator doors showed a woman who'd mastered the art of invisible panic. Her server's uniform was crisp, her hair pulled back tight enough to hurt, her smile practiced until it looked natural. Only her hands betrayed her, the way they smoothed her apron every 15 seconds, the slight tremor when she adjusted her name tag. The elevator chimed. 5th floor, where Seoul's elite ate meals worth more than her monthly rent. "You're on Section 7 tonight," the floor manager said without looking up from his tablet. His Korean was rapid, dismissive. After 8 months in Seoul, Nia caught maybe half of it. "VVIP table? No direct eye contact, no questions, no conversation unless absolutely required." Nia's stomach dropped. "Which table? The one by the windows?" He finally looked at her, his expression somewhere between pity and warning. "Jae-sun's table." She'd heard the name whispered in the staff room. Heard it in the careful way senior servers avoided certain sections. Heard it in the silence that followed when he entered the restaurant. The kind of silence that bent around power like gravity. "I understand," she lied. The dining hall stretched before her like a stage, all marble and gold, crystal chandeliers throwing soft light across white tablecloths and designer suits. Conversations murmured in Korean, Japanese, English. The scent of truffle oil and aged wine hung thick enough to taste. This was the world she served but would never enter. A world where her blackness made her exotic and forgettable in the same breath. She should have been grateful for the job. Grateful for the visa sponsorship. Grateful that the Azure had hired her when every other restaurant in Gangnam had turned her away. But gratitude was hard when you were breaking rules that could get you deported. Nia's eyes flickered toward the service hallway, the door half hidden behind a decorative screen. Behind that door, in the cramped staff break room that smelled of instant coffee and old kimchi, her daughter sat cross-legged on a plastic chair with an iPad and a promise. "Stay here, baby. Mommy will come back." Ava hadn't responded, hadn't nodded, hadn't even blinked. She just stared at the screen with those two old eyes, her small body rigid with the kind of tension that came from learning too young that the world wasn't safe. 6 months since she'd last spoken. 6 months since Derek had... Nia cut the thought before it could finish. Not here. Not now. She moved between tables with practiced efficiency, refilling water glasses, clearing plates, smiling at customers who didn't see her face. The VVIP section loomed ahead, a corner booth with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seoul skyline. 6 men in tailored suits, 5 of them talking, one sitting perfectly still, Jae-sun. She knew him by the space around him, the way even his own people leaned slightly away, the way conversation died when he lifted his wine glass. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of face that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so carefully empty. A fresh cut marked his cheekbone, dark against pale skin. He hadn't bothered to cover it. Men like him didn't need to hide their violence. Nia approached with water, her pulse hammering. Don't look, don't speak, don't exist. She'd almost made it past his table when she heard it. The sound that stopped her heart. A child's gasp, sharp, frightened, familiar. Nia's head snapped toward the service hallway. Through the narrow window in the door, she saw movement. Ava's curls, Ava's white dress, Ava running, and behind her, filling the lobby entrance like a thunderstorm, Derek's voice hit the restaurant. NEA! The wine glass slipped from her fingers. Crystal shattered against marble, and Ava disappeared into the dining hall. Will Nia reach her daughter before Derek does? Or will the most feared man in Seoul become their only protection? Subscribe to find out what happens when a terrified child chooses the monster over the man who calls himself her father. Derek didn't walk into the azure. He exploded into it. Nia heard him before she saw him. The slurred cursing, the crash of the host's stand being shoved aside, the manager's sharp Korean protests cut short by whatever expression Derek wore. She'd memorized that expression over 3 years of marriage. The red-faced rage. The entitled fury of a man who believed the world owed him everything. Especially the people he claimed to own. Where is she? His voice carried across the dining hall, American and loud and wrong in this cathedral of whispered power. Where's my daughter? Nia's body moved before her mind caught up. She abandoned the shattered glass, the spilled water, the carefully invisible persona she'd constructed. Her eyes scanned the dining room with the desperate precision of a mother who'd spent 6 months learning to read her silent child's fear. There, a flash of white near the windows. Ava's dress. Baby, no. The word died in Nia's throat, because Ava wasn't running toward her. She was running away from Derek, small legs pumping, curls bouncing, headed straight for the corner that every Azure employee had learned to avoid. Straight for Jae-sun's table. The dining hall fell silent in stages. First the tables nearest the entrance, conversations cutting off mid-word as Derek stormed past. Then the middle section, wealthy patrons looking up from their meals with the annoyed curiosity of people unused to disruption. Finally, the VVIP corner, where 5 men in expensive suits stopped talking, and 1 man in a black suit continued cutting his steak with surgical precision. Nia ran. Her sensible work shoes slipped on the polished marble. Her apron caught on a chair. She didn't care. All she saw was Ava, 6 years old and terrified, and about to collide with a world that would crush her without noticing. Derek's hand closed around Nia's arm first. The grip was immediate, familiar, designed to hurt without leaving visible marks. He yanked her backward hard enough that she stumbled, nearly fell. The scent of whiskey rolled off him in waves. You think you can steal from me? His breath was hot against her ear, his voice a growl meant only for her. You think you can take my kid and hide on the other side of the world? She's not... Nia's protest ended when his grip tightened. I paid for her, fed her, put a roof over her head. Derek's free hand grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. His eyes were bloodshot, pupils dilated. She's mine. You're both mine. Nia tasted copper. She'd bitten her tongue without realizing it. Security guards appeared at the edges of her vision. 2 large Korean men in dark suits moving with purpose. But they hesitated, stopped. Their eyes tracked past Derek to something behind him, and whatever they saw made them go very, very still. Because Ava had reached the table. Nia watched in horror as her daughter, her silent, traumatized baby, who hadn't responded to doctors or therapists or endless patient coaxing, dropped to her hands and knees. The white tablecloth hung low enough to hide her. She scrambled underneath, disappearing into shadow and the forest of expensive shoes and tailored pant legs. She crawled straight to Jae-sun. The man's legs were perfectly still. Black dress pants, shoes polished to a mirror shine, posture suggesting he'd been carved from marble. Nia saw the exact moment he noticed the small body huddled against his shin. His knife paused mid-cut. His head tilted downward, movement minimal, controlled. The entire table held its breath. Ava was shaking so hard Nia could see it from across the room. Tiny tremors that ran through her whole body. She'd pulled her knees to her chest, made herself as small as possible, wedged into the corner where table leg met man. Then she did something Nia had never seen her do. Not with doctors, not with teachers, not even with Nia anymore. Ava reached out and grabbed Jae-sun's ankle with both hands. She held on like he was the only thing keeping her from drowning. Derek's grip loosened on Nia's arm. Just slightly, just enough for shock. What the hell? Jae-sun set down his knife. The sound of silver against porcelain rang like a bell in the silence. He reached down, slowly, deliberately, and lifted the edge of the white tablecloth. Light spilled into Ava's hiding place. The child flinched, but didn't let go. Her blue eyes were enormous, wet with tears she refused to let fall. Her curls were tangled. Her dress was smudged with dust from crawling across the floor. She looked up at the most dangerous man in Seoul and whispered something. Nia couldn't hear it. No one could. But she saw Jae-sun's expression change. Not softening, exactly, but shifting. Something unreadable passing behind eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. He extended his hand. Palm up, offering. Ava stared at it for 3 heartbeats. 4, 5. Then she released his ankle and grabbed his hand instead, holding it with both of hers like it was a lifeline. Jae-sun stood. The movement was fluid, lethal grace wrapped in tailored wool. He didn't pull away from Ava's grip. Instead, he adjusted his stance to keep her sheltered behind the tablecloth, his body a wall between her and the world. Then he looked at Derek. What? Jae-sun said in perfect, unaccented English. Is disturbing my dinner? The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Power, Nia realized, didn't need to be loud. It stood perfectly still in a black suit and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper, and every person in the room leaned forward to catch the words. It didn't threaten. It didn't posture. It simply existed, and existence was enough to bend the world around it. Derek's hand fell away from Nia's arm. She saw the exact moment he understood what he'd walked into. The way his alcohol-flushed face went pale. The way his swagger collapsed into something smaller. His eyes darted around the dining hall, finally noticing the silent audience. The guards who'd materialized from nowhere. The 5 men at Jae-sun's table who'd pushed back their chairs and stood with the synchronized precision of soldiers. Derek's voice cracked. He cleared his throat, tried again. I'm just here for my family, my daughter. This is a misunderstanding. Jae-sun didn't blink. Your daughter? Yes, she's mine. That woman. He gestured at Nia like she was evidence. She kidnapped her. Took her out of the country without permission. I have rights. You have noise. Jae-sun's head tilted slightly, the movement predatory. Lower your voice. You're disturbing the other guests. It wasn't a request. Derek swallowed, nodded. Actually took a step backward. Nia watched this man who'd spent 3 years making her feel small, reduce himself to something smaller, and felt sick with the satisfaction of it. I just want to talk to my kid, Derek said, quieter now, attempting reasonable. That's not unreasonable, right? To see my own daughter? Jae-sun looked down. The tablecloth still shielded Ava, but Nia could see small fingers clutching the fabric, the shape of her daughter's body pressed against Jae-sun's legs. Come here, Jae-sun said, not to Derek, to Ava. The child didn't move. You're safe. His voice shifted, still quiet, but different, gentler, like he was coaxing a frightened animal. No one will hurt you? Slowly, so slowly, Ava emerged from beneath the table. She kept one hand locked around Jae-sun's fingers. Her other hand clutched his pant leg. She positioned herself behind him, using his body as a shield, and peered around his side at Derek with eyes that held 6 months of nightmares. Nia's heart cracked, because she recognized that look, that calculation, that assessment of threat levels and escape routes that no 6-year-old should know how to make. Ava. Derek tried for warmth, for fatherly concern. It came out wrong, too eager, too performative. Baby girl, it's Daddy. Don't you want to give Daddy a hug? Ava pressed closer to Jae-sun. See? Derek's mask slipped, frustration bleeding through. She's been poisoned against me. That woman filled her head with lies. Come to me, Ava, Nia said, finally finding her voice. She held out her arms, tried to make herself safe, solid, home. It's okay, baby. Come to Mommy. Ava looked at her. Blue eyes met brown, and Nia saw something that cut deeper than any of Derek's hands ever had. Hesitation. Her daughter, who she'd carried for 9 months and nursed for 2 years and protected with everything she had, hesitated. Then Ava turned away from both of them and buried her face against Jae-sun's leg. The man looked down at the small body clinging to him with something like surprise. His free hand hovered for a moment, uncertain, unpracticed, before settling on top of her head. The touch was careful, protective. He looked at Nia, then at Derek, then at the manager who'd appeared at the edge of the scene with 2 security guards and a phone pressed to his ear. This man, Jae-sun said in Korean, his voice carrying across the silent dining hall, is trespassing. Remove him. Now wait, Derek started. 3 men in dark suits materialized around him. They didn't touch him. Didn't need to. Their presence alone made Derek's shoulders hunch, made his hands come up in placating surrender. You can't just... I have rights. She's my daughter. Sir. One of the security guards spoke in heavily accented English. Please come with us. Police are coming. Police? Derek's voice pitched higher. For what? I didn't do anything. This is kidnapping. She took my kid across international borders. Jae-sun's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted. One of his men leaned down, whispered something in rapid Korean. The security guards' faces went carefully blank. The manager took 3 steps backward. Whatever had just been said, it ended the conversation. Wait outside, Jae-sun told the guards. I'll handle this. They left. Actually left. Taking Derek with them despite his protests, his threats, his attempts to explain that he was a U.S. citizen, that he had rights, that his lawyer would hear about this. The dining hall remained frozen. Nia stood in the wreckage of shattered glass and spilled water, her work uniform askew, her carefully constructed invisibility destroyed. Every eye in the restaurant was on her daughter, on the man her daughter had chosen over her own mother. Jae-sun crouched down. The movement brought him eye level with Ava. He was still holding her hand. She hadn't let go. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Ava shook her head. "Are you afraid of him?" She nodded. "Are you afraid of me?" Ava stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she shook her head. Jae-sun's expression cracked. Just slightly. Just enough for Nia to see something human beneath the monster. He reached out with his free hand and touched the cut on his own cheekbone. Showed it to Ava. "Someone hurt me today," he said quietly. "See? Even scary people get hurt sometimes." Ava looked at the wound. Then, before Nia could stop her, before anyone could react, she lifted her small hand and touched it. Gentle, curious, her fingertips barely grazed the darkening bruise. "Does it hurt?" Her voice was so soft, Nia almost missed it. So rusty from disuse, it barely sounded like words. But they were words. 6 months of silence, and her daughter had spoken to a stranger. Jae-sun's eyes widened fractionally. "Yes," he said, "but I'm okay." "Okay," Ava whispered, and then, even softer, "Help." One word, directed at him, at the man the entire city feared. Jae-sun stood slowly, bringing Ava with him. She clung to his hand like it was the only solid thing in a tilting world. He looked at Nia with an expression she couldn't read. Assessment, calculation, something else she didn't have words for. "She chose me," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact that rearranged everything. A child who hasn't spoken in 6 months just said her first word to Seoul's most dangerous man. What happens when protection comes with a price? Subscribe now, because what happens next reveals the sanctuary that might cost Nia her freedom. The penthouse smelled like money and emptiness. Nia stood in the entrance hall, if a space that size could be called a hall, and tried to process the transition from her cramped studio apartment in Itaewon to this glass and steel monument to power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Seoul's glittering sprawl. White marble floors reflected recessed lighting. The furniture was minimal, expensive, cold. Everything was sharp angles and clean lines, designed by someone who valued aesthetics over comfort. This was where monsters lived. "The guest wing is to the left." Jae-sun's voice came from behind her, startling her out of the paralysis. 2 bedrooms, private bathroom. The kitchen is stocked. My housekeeper comes twice a week. He'd shed his suit jacket somewhere between the azure and the car ride that had brought them here. His white shirt was rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with lean muscle and a tattoo she couldn't quite make out. The cut on his cheekbone had stopped bleeding, but looked worse under the bright lights. A dark slash that should have made him look vulnerable, but somehow didn't. Ava was asleep against his shoulder. She'd fallen asleep in the car, exhausted by terror and adrenaline crash. And when Jae-sun had tried to hand her to Nia, she'd whimpered and clung tighter to his shirt. So he'd carried her, was still carrying her. This man who reportedly ended lives with a phone call was cradling Nia's daughter like she was made of glass. "Why are you doing this?" The question escaped before Nia could stop it. Jae-sun looked at her. Really looked, for the first time since they'd left the restaurant. His eyes were dark, unreadable, the kind of eyes that had seen things Nia couldn't imagine and felt nothing about them. "Derek will come back," he said simply. "Men like him always do. Ego won't let them accept loss." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you'll get tonight." He moved past her toward the guest wing, his footsteps silent on marble. "The rooms are secure, Bulletproof glass, reinforced doors, panic button by the bed connects directly to my security team. Nia's stomach turned. You think we need bulletproof glass? I think you need to understand what protection costs. He paused at the doorway, shifted Ava's weight slightly. The child murmured something incoherent and buried her face deeper into his neck. Your ex-husband made calls before the police arrived. To people he shouldn't know. To organizations that will now know you're here. What organizations? The kind that trade in leverage. Jae-sun's expression darkened. He offered information about my movements, my schedule, my vulnerabilities, in exchange for help retrieving his stolen property. The words hit like fists. He sold us out? He sold you to my enemies. Jae-sun's voice remained flat, factual. Which means you're now part of a game you don't understand and can't win on your own. Nia's knees felt weak. She pressed her palm against the wall for support, the cold marble grounding her. So what? You're keeping us here? Like prisoners? Like assets I'm choosing to protect. He studied her face, looking for something. You can leave. Tomorrow, today, right now if you want. I'll arrange transport, a safe house in another city. Money to start over. But Derek knows you ran to Seoul, knows you work service jobs, knows you can't afford lawyers or security. Jae-sun adjusted Ava again, so gently it made Nia's chest ache. He'll find you in a week, maybe less. And next time, he'll bring people who know how to disappear someone permanently. The apartment suddenly felt smaller despite its size. Nia looked at her daughter, at the way Ava's small hand fisted in Jae-sun's shirt. The way her breathing had finally evened out into something like peace. What do you want from us? Nia whispered. I want, Jae-sun said slowly, like he was figuring it out as he spoke. To understand why a child who's never met me trusts me more than her own father. She doesn't trust easily. I noticed. Something flickered in his expression, curiosity maybe, or recognition. When did she stop talking? 6 months ago. Nia's throat tightened. After Derek, after the last time. She couldn't finish, didn't need to. Jae-sun's jaw tightened fractionally, the only sign he'd understood. Show me her room, he said. The guest bedroom was as sterile as the rest of the penthouse. White walls, minimalist furniture, a bed too large for a child. But there was a window seat overlooking the city, and blackout curtains that could shut out the world. Jae-sun laid Ava down on top of the covers, careful not to wake her. She curled into herself immediately, instinct making her small. She'll need things, he said, straightening. Clothes, toys, whatever makes her feel safe. I have some things. In storage. If I can, I'll have it retrieved. He moved toward the door, paused. There are rules here. You don't leave without security. You don't answer the door. You don't trust anyone except my housekeeper and my head of security. His name is Min-jun. He'll introduce himself tomorrow. And you? Nia asked. Should I trust you? Jae-sun looked back at her daughter, at the small body finally relaxed in sleep. I don't know yet, he said honestly, but she seems to think so. He left. Nia stood alone in the too big room with her too small daughter and tried to understand how her life had collapsed and been rebuilt in the span of 3 hours. She should call someone, her mother back in Atlanta, her friend who'd helped her get the visa, someone who could tell her this was crazy, that she was trading one dangerous man for another. But who would believe her? She curled up next to Ava on the bed, breathing in the scent of her daughter's hair, baby shampoo and fear sweat and something else. something that smelled like expensive cologne, like Jae-sun. Outside the window, Seoul glittered like a promise or a threat. Nia couldn't tell which. She fell asleep counting the ways this could go wrong. 3 floors down, in an office that doubled as an armory, Jae-sun made a phone call. "Derek Matthews," he said in Korean. "American. Mid-30s. Currently being held by hotel security at the Azure. I want everything. Bank accounts, employment history, criminal record, known associates." "Yes, sir." His head of security's voice was crisp, professional. "What level of response?" Jae-sun looked at the monitor on his desk. Security footage showing the guest wing, showing a black woman and a small child sleeping in a bed too big for them. Showing vulnerability he'd invited into his home for reasons he didn't quite understand. "Deterrent level," he said finally. "Make sure he knows pursuit has consequences. But don't eliminate him yet. The child might have questions later." "Understood, sir." Minjun hesitated. "Is this assignment or personal?" Jae-sun touched the cut on his cheek. Remembered small fingers, gentle and curious, checking to see if he was okay. Remembered a voice rusty from disuse asking if he hurt. "I'll let you know when I figure it out," he said, and ended the call. Nia woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. For 3 disoriented seconds, she forgot where she was. The bed was too soft. The ceiling was too high. The silence was too complete. No traffic noise, no neighbors arguing through thin walls, no constant hum of survival that had soundtracked her life for 8 months. Then she remembered. Penthouse, Mafia boss, daughter who'd chosen a stranger over her own mother. Nia sat up fast, heart hammering. "Ava?" The bed beside her was empty. Panic hit like ice water. She threw off the covers, stumbled toward the door, already imagining the worst. Derek breaking in. Ava taken. Every nightmare coming true at once. She found them in the kitchen. Jae-sun sat at a breakfast bar that probably cost more than Nia's annual salary. Dressed in a fitted black t-shirt and slacks, reading something on a tablet. Ava sat beside him on a bar stool that was too tall for her, legs swinging, carefully spreading jam on toast. They weren't talking, but they were together, and Ava looked calm, present. The rigid tension that had defined her for 6 months had loosened just slightly. "Good morning." Jae-sun looked up, his expression neutral. "There's coffee. The housekeeper brought breakfast." Nia approached slowly, trying to read the situation. Ava glanced at her, smiled slightly, the first real smile in months, and went back to her toast. Like this was normal. Like sitting next to Seoul's most feared criminal while eating breakfast was just another Tuesday. "How long have you been up?" Nia asked. "An hour." Jae-sun pushed a coffee cup toward her. Black? No sugar. He'd somehow known how she took it. "She was standing in the hallway when I came back from my run. Just standing there." "She has nightmares," Nia said quietly. "I know, I heard her." He paused. "She didn't call for you." The words weren't cruel, just factual, but they landed like a blade between Nia's ribs anyway. "She used to," Nia whispered. "Before." Jae-sun nodded once, accepting this. He turned his attention back to Ava, watched her struggle to cut her toast into smaller pieces. Without a word, he reached over and cut it for her. The gesture was efficient, practiced, like he'd done it before. "Do you have kids?" The question escaped before Nia could stop it. "No." "Then how?" "I was one once." His voice was flat. "I remember what help looks like when you're too small to ask for it properly." Nia wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, letting the heat ground her. The kitchen was all white marble and stainless steel, morning light streaming through windows that probably cost more than her education. This was a life she'd never imagined for herself, protected by violence, sheltered by fear, existing in the shadow of a man whose name made grown men lower their voices. "I need to call work," she said. "They'll fire me." "Already handled. You're on paid leave. Family emergency." Nia's head snapped up. "You can't just— I own 40% of the Azure's parent company." Jae-sun's tone didn't change, like he was discussing the weather. "Your manager will not ask questions." "I don't want your money." "Then consider it payment for information." He slid a folder across the counter. Manila, expensive paper, the weight of things that would change everything. Derek's history, everything my people could find in 12 hours. Nia stared at the folder like it might bite her. "I don't want to know." "You need to know." Jae-sun's voice softened fractionally. "You need to understand what you're running from." Ava finished her toast and slid off the bar stool. She walked around the counter, not to Nia, but to Jae-sun, and tugged on his shirt sleeve. When he looked down, she pointed at the tablet he'd been reading. "Games?" she asked. One word, but clearer than yesterday. Stronger. "After you finish your milk." She nodded, climbed back onto her stool, and reached for the glass he'd poured for her. Nia watched this interaction, this bizarre domesticity between a traumatized child and a man who reportedly had 17 confirmed kills, and felt something crack open in her chest. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of understanding that safety didn't always look like she'd expected it to. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked again. Jae-sun was quiet for a long moment. He watched Ava drink her milk, watched the way she trusted him to be there, solid and constant. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, rougher. "Because 23 years ago, I was hiding under a table while my father beat my mother in the kitchen, and no one came. No one stopped him. No one even noticed." He looked at Nia, and for the first time, she saw past the monster to the boy he'd been. "Your daughter noticed me. She asked if I was hurt. She chose to trust me when trust should have been impossible. So this is guilt? This is recognition." He stood, carried his empty cup to the sink. "I know what happens to children who learn too young that they can't count on anyone. I became what I am. She doesn't have to." Nia opened the folder. The first page was a police report from Florida. Domestic disturbance. Derek's name, a woman's name she didn't recognize. Hospital visit. Charges dropped. The second page was another report. Different woman, same pattern. The third page made her hands shake. Derek had been married before, twice. Both wives had filed restraining orders. Both had disappeared from public records within a year of the divorces. "Where are they?" Nia whispered. "I'm still looking." Jae-sun's voice was carefully neutral. "But one changed her name 3 times. The other moved to Alaska and doesn't maintain social media." "They ran." "They survived." He paused. "You're the first one who ran internationally, the first one who had something he actually wanted back." Nia looked at Ava, who was now playing some kind of puzzle game on Jae-sun's tablet, her small face scrunched in concentration. Beautiful, perfect, worth everything. "He doesn't want her because he loves her," Nia said slowly. "He wants her because I took her, because I won." "Yes." Jae-sun moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his body heat. "Which means he won't stop. Ever. Men like him don't understand de-escalation." "So, what do? "We make him understand consequences." Jason's jaw tightened. We make him afraid. Something dark flickered across his face, something that reminded Nia exactly who she was talking to. This wasn't a savior. This was a man who broke people for a living. But her daughter was smiling at his tablet, and Nia hadn't seen her smile in 6 months. I can't pay you back, she said quietly. Whatever this costs, I don't have it. I'm not asking for payment. Then what are you asking for? Jae-sun looked at her, really looked, the kind of gaze that saw too much and catalogued everything. His eyes were so dark they were almost black, holding depths she couldn't read. Stay, he said simply. Let me keep you safe. Let me understand why she trusts me. He paused. Let me figure out why I can't breathe when I think about something happening to either of you. The confession landed between them like a grenade. Nia's breath caught. You don't even know us. I know enough. His hand moved, not to touch her, but close enough that she felt the heat of it. I know you're brave enough to run across the world alone. I know you're strong enough to smile through fear every day. I know your daughter hasn't spoken in 6 months, but said my name last night when she had a nightmare. She said your name? She asked where I was. His voice dropped lower. She wanted me to check for monsters. Nia's throat tightened. What did you tell her? That I already scared them away. Jae-sun's hand finally made contact, just his fingertips against her wrist, testing, asking permission. That they won't come back while I'm here. Can you promise that? I've never made a promise I couldn't keep. His thumb traced the inside of her wrist, found her racing pulse. I'm not starting now. Ava looked up from the tablet. She watched them standing close, watched her mother not pulling away, watched something pass between them that she was too young to name. Then she smiled, small, secret, pleased, and went back to her game. Like she'd been waiting for exactly this. That night, after Ava fell asleep between them on the couch during a movie she didn't understand, Jae-sun carried her to bed again. Nia followed, watching the way he moved with her. Careful, protective, natural. You're good at this, she said from the doorway. At what? Being what she needs. Jae-sun looked down at Ava's sleeping face, at the way her hand still clutched his shirt even in sleep. Something vulnerable crossed his expression. Something that made him look younger, almost breakable. She makes it easy, he said. She doesn't expect me to be anything except present. Is that rare for you? Everything about this is rare for me. He carefully detached Ava's fingers from his shirt, tucked the blanket around her. I don't do families. I don't do attachments. I don't do anything that creates leverage. But she asked if I was okay. He straightened, moved toward Nia, stopped just close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. And you looked at me like I was human instead of useful. And now I can't go back to before I knew what that felt like. Nia's heart hammered. This is dangerous. Everything about me is dangerous. His hand came up, cupped her jaw with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. But I've never been dangerous to someone I've chosen to protect. How do I know that's true? You don't. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You trust your daughter's instincts instead of your fear, and hope that whatever she saw in me is real. Then he kissed her, soft, questioning. Nothing like she'd expected from a man whose name made cities quiet. His lips were warm, his touch careful, like he was handling something precious that might shatter if he pressed too hard. Nia kissed him back. 3 floors down, in an office filled with screens showing borders and movements and threats, Min-jun took a phone call that would change everything. "Sir," he said carefully, "we have a problem. Derek Matthews just made contact with the Young family. They're offering resources." Jae-sun's voice came through clear, cold, absolute. "Prepare the estate for siege protocol and find out what he offered them." "Sir, they want—" Min-jun paused. "They want the American woman and her daughter as trade for their son you hospitalized last year." Silence on the line. Then, "Initiate full protection. No one gets close. And Min-jun?" "Yes, sir?" "If Derek Matthews sets foot in Seoul again, I want to know before he clears customs." A kiss that could start a war. A deal that could end everything. When the deadliest family in Seoul wants what Jae-sun has claimed as his, how far will he go to keep them safe? Subscribe. For what happens next brings the violence home. The attack came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Nia woke to silence. The wrong kind. The kind that pressed against eardrums like a held breath. She reached for Ava instinctively, found the bed beside her empty, and tasted copper fear. Then she heard it. Not sound, but the absence of it. The ambient hum of the penthouse, air conditioning, distant traffic, the barely there electrical buzz of a building alive, had gone completely dead. Power cut. Nia's hand found the panic button by the bed. She pressed it 3 times, the way Min-jun had taught her during the security briefing she'd only half listened to because it seemed paranoid. Nothing happened. No alarm, no flashing lights, no response. She grabbed her phone. Dead. Not battery dead. Completely bricked, screen black, unresponsive. "Ava," she whispered into the darkness. Movement in the hallway. Footsteps too heavy to be her daughter's. Nia's body moved on instinct. Off the bed, across the room, into the closet where Min-jun had shown her the safe room entrance. Her fingers found the panel. Pressed the hidden latch. The door clicked open just as her bedroom door exploded inward. 2 men. Masks. Guns. Nia ran. She crashed through the safe room door, slammed it behind her. Heard the magnetic locks engage with a sound like breaking bones. The space was tiny. Reinforced steel walls, emergency phone, water, medical supplies. Everything you'd need to survive while waiting for rescue. Everything except her daughter. Nia grabbed the emergency phone. Deadline. Cut. Outside, she heard voices. Korean, rapid, professional. Not panicked. Not rushed. They'd done this before. Then she heard something that stopped her heart. Ava screaming. Not words, just sound. Pure terror in a voice that had been silent for so long that hearing it used for fear felt like desecration. Nia's hands scrabbled at the door. There was no inside release. That was the point. You locked yourself in and waited for help. You didn't go back out into danger. But her daughter was out there. She pressed her ear to the steel, heard furniture breaking, heard men's voices getting closer, heard Ava crying, actually crying, making sounds, alive and terrified, and calling for someone, not for Nia. "Jae-sun!" Ava's voice cracked on his name. "Jae-sun, please!" Nia closed her eyes and made a choice. The safe room had an emergency override. A mechanical release that would open the door but trigger every alarm in the building simultaneously. It was meant for fire, for structural collapse, for scenarios where staying inside was more dangerous than getting out. She pulled it. The door unlocked with a hiss of released pressure. Alarms shrieked to life, different from the panic button. Louder, impossible to ignore. Emergency lighting flickered on, bathing everything in red. Nia emerged into chaos. Her bedroom was destroyed, furniture overturned, belongings scattered. 2 men in tactical gear stood in her doorway, startled by the alarm. Beyond them, In the hallway, she could see Ava struggling in a third man's grip, her small body thrashing, her voice hoarse from screaming. And behind them, stepping out of the emergency stairwell with blood on his white shirt and murder in his eyes, Jae-sun. He moved like violence incarnate. The first man didn't see him coming. One moment he was standing, the next he was on the ground, with his arm bent at an angle that made Nia's stomach turn. No gun. Jae-sun had disarmed him so fast she'd missed the movement. The second man raised his weapon. Jae-sun was faster. The gun clattered to the floor. The man followed it, unconscious before he hit marble. The third man, the one holding Ava, pressed a knife to her throat. Everything stopped. Ava went completely still, her blue eyes enormous, fixed on Jae-sun with an expression that was part terror and part desperate hope. The blade was sharp enough that Nia could see where it dented her daughter's skin without breaking it yet. One wrong move and... Let her go. Jae-sun's voice was perfectly calm. He stood 10 feet away, hands visible, no weapon drawn. Blood dripped from a cut on his temple. His shirt was torn. He looked like he'd fought his way through an army. He probably had. "Back up," the man said in Korean accented English. "Or I cut her." "You won't." "Try me." "I don't need to try." Jae-sun took one step forward. Just one. "Because if you hurt her, I will spend the rest of your very short life making you regret it. I will start with your hands, then your eyes, then every person you've ever loved. I will erase you so completely that your own mother won't remember your name." The knife trembled. "But if you let her go right now," Jae-sun continued, still in that terrible calm voice, "I'll let you live. You can walk out of here. Go back to whoever sent you. Tell them what you saw." "They'll kill me for failing." "Then you're dead either way." Jason's head tilted slightly. "Choose how." Behind them, Nia heard new sounds, running footsteps, shouts, the organized chaos of security responding to the alarm. Minjun's voice cut through, barking orders in Korean. The man holding Ava looked at Jae-sun, at the blood, at the two unconscious men, at the way Jae-sun stood perfectly still like a predator that didn't need to chase because the prey had nowhere to run. He lowered the knife. Ava lunged forward the second the blade left her throat. She ran, not to Nia, not to safety, to Jae-sun. He caught her in one smooth motion, lifting her against his chest, turning his body to shield her from the man who'd held her. "Go," he said quietly. The man went. Minjun appeared with 6 guards, guns drawn, ready to fire. "Sir." "Let him leave." Jae-sun's arms tightened around Ava, who was sobbing into his shoulder. "He's the message." "What message?" "That I will burn their entire organization to the ground if they touch what's mine again." He looked at Nia over Ava's head, his expression something between rage and relief. "Are you hurt?" Nia shook her head, couldn't find words. "The safe room." "She came out for Ava," Minjun said quietly. "Triggered the emergency override." Something flickered in Jae-sun's expression. He crossed to Nia in 3 strides, his free hand cupping her face, checking for injuries with touches that were gentle, despite the violence still thrumming through him. "You were supposed to stay inside," he said roughly. "She was screaming for you." "So you risked your life?" "She's my daughter." Nia's voice broke. "What did you expect me to do?" Jae-sun stared at her. Then he pulled her into his arms, careful of Ava between them, creating a cocoon of safety with his body. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing hard, trembling with adrenaline crash, or emotion or both. "I can't do this." he whispered. I can't keep you safe if you won't let me. Then teach me how to fight instead of hide. He pulled back to look at her, surprised. I'm not helpless, Nia said. I'm just untrained. There's a difference. Ava lifted her head from Jae-sun's shoulder, looked at her mother, then at him. Her small hand patted his cheek, the one with the cut, the one she'd touched so gently that first night. Home, she said clearly. The first full word she'd spoken to Nia in 6 months. Want to go home? We are home, Jae-sun said softly. This is home, where we all are. Ava nodded against his chest. Safe here. Yes. His arms tightened around both of them. Safe here. But Nia saw his expression over her daughter's head, saw the calculation, the fury, the promise of retribution. Whatever safety they had right now was built on violence. Maintained by fear, protected by a man who would kill without hesitation if they were threatened again. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something else entirely. Grateful. Derek's body was found 3 days later in a hotel room in Busan. Official cause of death, heart attack. Unofficial, fear so profound it stopped his heart when he realized what Jae-sun had taken from him. Not his life, his power. Every account frozen, every contact burned, every bridge back to the criminal networks he'd tried to trade with collapsed. He'd died alone, broke and terrified, knowing that the man he'd threatened could reach him anywhere, anytime. Nia learned about it from a news alert on her phone. She was in the kitchen when it came through, making breakfast while Ava colored at the table. The notification was in Korean, but she'd learned enough to understand the important words. American man, found dead, police investigating. She should have felt something. Relief, vindication, grief for the man she'd once loved before she'd learned what he really was. Instead, she felt nothing but a bone-deep exhaustion finally releasing. You knew, she said when Jae-sun appeared in the doorway an hour later. He didn't deny it. Yes. Did you? No. He poured himself coffee, his movements unhurried. I didn't need to. I just made sure he understood exactly how alone he was. How no one would help him. How every door he'd try to open would close in his face. He paused. His heart did the rest. That's still killing him? That's letting consequences happen. Jae-sun looked at her steadily. I won't apologize for it. I'm not asking you to. Nia set down her coffee cup, her hands shaking slightly. I'm trying to figure out how to feel about the fact that I'm glad he's dead. Feel however you need to feel. He moved closer, his hand settling on her lower back, a touch that had become familiar over the past 3 days of recovery and rebuilding. You're allowed to be relieved that a threat is gone. Ava looked up from her coloring. Bad man? They both turned to stare at her. She'd started talking more each day, short sentences, careful words, like she was relearning a language she'd forgotten. But this was the first time she'd asked about Derek directly. Yes, Nia said honestly. Bad man. Gone? Yes, baby, he's gone. Ava nodded, satisfied, and went back to her drawing, like it was that simple. Like the man who terrorized her for the first 6 years of her life could be dismissed with a single confirmation that he no longer existed. Maybe for her, it was that simple. Children were better at survival than adults gave them credit for. I have something to show you, Jae-sun said quietly. He led Nia to his office, a space she'd only glimpsed in passing, all dark wood and leather and the subtle scent of expensive whiskey. He opened his laptop, pulled up a document. Legal guardianship papers, he explained. For Ava, making you her sole legal parent, with me listed as secondary guardian in case of emergency. Nia's breath caught. Why? Because Derek's family might try to claim custody. His parents, his siblings? This makes it impossible. He scrolled down. And because I want it on record that she's protected. That she belongs here, with us. Us? Yes. Jae-sun turned to face her fully. I know this is fast. I know it's insane. I know you have every reason to run the moment you feel safe enough. But I can't imagine my life without you in it anymore. His hand cupped her jaw, thumb tracing her cheekbone. Either of you. I wake up and check on her before I check my phone. I come home and look for her drawings on my desk. I listen for your voice and breathe easier when I hear it. That's codependence, not love. Maybe. His smile was slight, self-aware. Or maybe it's both. Maybe I've spent my whole life avoiding attachment because I didn't know it could feel like this. Like what? Like purpose. He kissed her softly. Like home. Nia kissed him back, tasting coffee and promise and the beginning of something that terrified and thrilled her equally. When she pulled away, she was smiling. Ask me, she whispered. Ask you what? What you want to ask. Jae-sun's expression shifted, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen him. Open and uncertain and so painfully hopeful it made her chest ache. Stay, he said. Not as protection, not as obligation, but as choice, as family. He paused. Choose me the way she did. Choose us. I already did. Nia's hand covered his. The moment I kissed you back. 3 months later, in a private park that Jae-sun had built with playground equipment and cherry trees and spaces designed for a child's joy, Ava ran toward them with a drawing clutched in her small hands. Look, she called out, her voice bright and clear and so beautifully normal it made Nia's eyes burn. I made us! The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands. A tall man with dark hair, a woman with brown skin, a small girl with curls between them. Above their heads, she'd drawn a house. Not the penthouse, not any place that existed. Just the concept of home. Jae-sun knelt to accept the drawing, his expression soft in a way that still surprised Nia sometimes. The monster of Seoul, brought to his knees by a 6-year-old's crayon masterpiece. It's perfect, he said seriously. We'll frame it. For your office? For everywhere. He lifted her easily, settled her on his hip like she weighed nothing. So everyone knows who matters most. Ava beamed and wrapped her arms around his neck. Then she looked at Nia and extended one arm, reaching. Nia moved into the embrace, let herself be gathered into this strange, imperfect, dangerous family they'd built from trauma and trust and choices that still didn't make sense, but felt right anyway. The most feared man in Seoul held them both and smiled. Not the calculated smile he used for business, not the cold smile that preceded violence, but a real smile, warm and unguarded and human. Because a child had chosen him first, and he'd chosen them back. Thank you for staying until the very end of Nia, Ava, and Jae-sun's journey. If this story moved you, if you felt the fear, the hope, and the unexpected love, please subscribe. Your support helps us create more stories where broken people find family in the most unlikely places. Hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments. Would you have trusted Jae-sun? We'll see you in the next story.